There are more than 24,000 ramen restaurants in Japan. 5,000 of them are in Tokyo alone. That is more ramen shops in a single city than most countries have pharmacies. And ramen is not even considered fine dining there. It is cheap, fast, and eaten standing up in under 10 minutes. Japan has a relationship with food that is unlike anywhere else on Earth. It is not just about eating well, it's about honoring craft. A sushi chef in Tokyo might spend 2 full years doing nothing but cooking and seasoning rice before he is ever allowed to touch a piece of fish. So when you land in Japan and you are standing in front of a menu written entirely in Japanese characters, surrounded by smells you cannot quite identify yet, knowing a little of the history behind what is in front of you changes everything. This video is your guide. We are going to cover the full landscape of Japanese cuisine, from the sushi counters of Tokyo and the Tonkatsu ramen stalls of Fukuoka to the yakitori skewers sizzling over binchotan charcoal at a late-night izakaya in Osaka and the perfectly folded onigiri sitting in a refrigerated shelf at your local konbini at 2 in the morning. We'll get into tempura, tonkatsu, gyoza, karaage, miso soup, and the dish that almost nobody outside Japan expects to be a national obsession, Japanese curry. Some of these dishes were born in Tokyo street markets called yatai, then spread north to Hokkaido and south to Fukuoka, picking up new flavors along the way. Others arrived from China, Portugal, and Britain, and were so thoroughly reinvented on Japanese soil that they barely resembled what they started as. For every dish, we'll cover where it came from, what makes it worth finding, and a few things that might genuinely surprise you. Let's start with the most famous one, sushi, the one that started it all. Here's something most people get wrong right from the start. Sushi is not raw fish. Sushi is vinegared rice. The word itself refers to the rice. The toppings, including raw fish, are secondary. In fact, the earliest versions of sushi had nothing to do with fresh ingredients at all. The original dish, called nare-zushi, came from Southeast Asia and was a preservation method. Fish was packed in salted, fermented rice for months at a time, sometimes up to a year. The rice was thrown away. Only the fish was eaten. It was not until the Edo period, in the early 1800s, that a chef named Hanaya Yohei changed everything. Working in the city then called Edo, which we now know as Tokyo, he started pressing vinegared rice by hand and laying fresh fish right on top. No fermentation, no waiting. It could be made and eaten in minutes. He called it Edo Mae Zushi, after the bay in front of Edo where the seafood was caught. It was street food. Workers bought it from stalls and ate it standing up. That's the great irony of sushi today. The version now served in high-end restaurants with tasting menus and reservation wait lists of 6 months started as fast food. When you visit a sushi restaurant, there are a few things worth knowing. The word wasabi on most menus is a small lie. The green paste you are given in most places is actually dyed horseradish. Real wasabi, freshly grated from the root, is rare and expensive. Also, you don't need chopsticks. Nigiri, the hand-pressed kind, is eaten with your fingers, the way it was always intended. Tip it sideways, dip the fish lightly into soy sauce, and eat it in one bite. If you want to judge the quality of a sushi restaurant before you order anything expensive, look at the tamago, which is the egg. It sounds plain, but making good tamago is technically demanding. If that's done right, everything else probably is too. And one more thing, the conveyor belt restaurant you might be eyeing? The first one opened in Osaka in 1958. The inventor, Yoshiaki Shiraishi, reportedly got the idea from watching beer bottles move along an assembly line. Ramen, the bowl that conquered the world. Ramen didn't start in Japan. It came from Chinese wheat noodle dishes, brought into Japanese port cities in the late 19th century. The first actual ramen shop, called Rai Rai Ken, opened in Asakasa neighborhood of Tokyo in 1910. On busy days, it served 3,000 bowls. But the real explosion happened after World War II. Japan was dealing with food shortages, and the United States was flooding the country with surplus wheat to help with the crisis. Ramen was cheap to make, filling, and quick to eat. Street stall vendors, called yatai, set up near factory gates and rail stations. Workers lined up before and after shifts. The bowl became the fuel of post-war Japan. Then, in 1958, a man named Momofuku Ando changed the game permanently. He invented instant ramen. In a poll asking Japanese people to name the greatest invention of the 20th century, they ranked instant noodles at number 1. Not the bullet train, not the Walkman. Instant noodles. Here's how regional ramen works, because it matters when you travel. Japan is a long, narrow country with wildly different climates, and ramen adapted to each one. In Hokkaido in the north, winters are brutal, so the miso ramen there is thick and warming, often topped with corn, butter, and bean sprouts. In Fukuoka in the south, tonkatsu ramen is king. Tonkatsu means pork bone, and the story of how it was invented is actually a happy accident. A chef left the broth simmering too long, and the pork bones turned the liquid thick, white, and impossibly rich. Instead of throwing it out, they tasted it. It's now one of the most popular ramen styles on earth. Tokyo-style shoyu ramen uses a soy-based chicken broth, lighter and more delicate. Coastal regions tend toward shio, or salt ramen, which is the clearest and oldest of all the broths. When you're at a ramen restaurant, don't worry about making noise. Slurping is not rude. It's completely normal, and some people would argue it actually improves the flavor by aerating the noodles. Eat fast. Most ramen shops are small, and there will likely be someone waiting behind you. Yakitori, the grill and the gathering. If you end up in Japan for work, or want to spend an evening the way most locals actually do, you'll find your way to an izakaya. An izakaya is Japan's version of a neighborhood pub, but warmer and louder and with better food. The word literally means stay, drink, place. They trace back to the Edo period, when sake shops started letting customers sit down and drink on the premises. Someone eventually figured out that people drank more when they had food in front of them, and the rest followed naturally. The dish you'll always find at an izakaya is yakitori. That word means grilled bird, and it refers to chicken on bamboo skewers cooked over charcoal, specifically bin-chotan, a type of Japanese white charcoal that burns extremely hot and clean and gives the meat a distinct smokiness you can't replicate any other way. Here's the historical twist. For most of Japan's history, eating meat was culturally restricted under Buddhist influence. Even chicken was considered too much. The earliest yakitori used sparrows and wild quails, birds that people hunted or caught because they damaged rice crops. Chicken only became widely available in Japan after American poultry breeds arrived in the 1960s. What you eat at a yakitori counter now uses every part of the bird. There's momo, the thigh, the most popular cut, juicy and rich. There's negima, alternating pieces of thigh with Japanese leek. Tsukune are chicken meatballs, often served with a raw egg yolk to dip in. More adventurous options include kawa, the crispy grilled skin, and hatsu, the heart. You season your skewer one of two ways: tare, which is a sweet soy glaze, or shio, which is just salt. The salt option is when you really want to taste the chicken. Some yakitori restaurants in Tokyo have Michelin stars, but the best yakitori experience, honestly, is usually the smoky hole in the wall near a train station full of people who just finished a long day of work. If you're enjoying this breakdown of Japan's food culture and you want more content like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video.
Tempura, the dish with a Portuguese secret. Tempura is one of the most iconic dishes in Japanese cuisine. Light batter, flash fried, crisp without being greasy. Shrimp, sweet potato, mushroom, green bean. And it is not Japanese. In 1543, a Chinese ship with 3 Portuguese sailors got blown off course on its way to Macau and ended up on the Japanese island of Tanegashima. They became the first Europeans ever to set foot in Japan. From that accidental landing came trade, and from trade came food. Portuguese missionaries who arrived in the following decades prepared a dish during Lent called peixinhos de horta, battered and fried green beans eaten on the days when Catholics abstained from meat. The name tempura almost certainly comes from the Latin word tempora, referring to those fasting periods. Japanese cooks watched, adapted, and then did something the Portuguese never managed. They perfected it. They lightened the batter by using ice-cold water and barely mixing it, leaving lumps that create the airy, almost transparent shell you get today. They swapped out the pork lard for sesame oil. They matched it with a dipping sauce of dashi, soy, and mirin, with grated daikon on the side to cut the richness. In the Edo period, frying tempura indoors was actually banned in Tokyo. Splashed oil was a fire hazard in buildings made of paper and wood, so it was cooked and sold exclusively from street stalls, eaten off skewers. Today, you can eat it as a standalone restaurant experience over rice in a danboi bowl or on top of udon or soba noodles. The Portuguese left Japan in 1639 after the shogunate banned Christianity. The tempura stayed. Tonkatsu, the cutlet with a French accent. If you have ever eaten a breaded, deep-fried pork cutlet in Japan and thought it felt vaguely European, you are right. Tonkatsu began as a French dish. During the Meiji era in the late 1800s, Japan deliberately opened itself to Western culture after centuries of isolation. French cuisine arrived with that opening, including a veal cutlet called côte de veau, coated in breadcrumbs and fried in butter. A restaurant in Ginza called Rengate tried to serve it. The problem was that butter frying the meat left it too oily and heavy for Japanese palates. Looking at the tempura restaurants nearby, the chefs borrowed the technique of submerging the food completely in hot oil instead of pan frying it. They swapped out the veal for cheaper pork. They replaced stale European breadcrumbs with soft, fresh panko. The result was tonkatsu, officially born in 1899. The name is a combination of ton, the Japanese word for pig, and katsu, which comes from the English word cutlet, borrowed from French. It is now served as katsudon, placed over a bowl of rice with egg, for one of Japan's most beloved comfort meals. As katsu kare, it is paired with Japanese curry sauce, and as a katsu sando, it's tucked into soft white bread and taken on the train. One more detail worth knowing: many Japanese people eat katsu before big exams or important competitions. The word katsu also means to win in Japanese, so eating it is considered good luck. Gyoza and karaage, two dishes that deserve their own mention because once you try them, you'll spend the rest of your trip tracking them down. Gyoza came to Japan from China the same way many foods did, through soldiers. Japanese troops stationed in Manchuria during the war in the 1930s and 40s developed a taste for Chinese dumplings. When they came home, they brought the recipe with them. The Japanese version is thinner-skinned, flatter, and almost always pan-fried crispy on one side. Dip them in a mix of soy sauce, rice vinegar, and a few drops of chili oil. Most ramen shops have them as a side. In the city of Utsunomiya, north of Tokyo, gyoza is not a side dish, it's the whole meal. Karaage is the fried chicken. And while the name refers technically to any fried food, if someone in Japan says they want karaage, they mean chicken thighs marinated in soy sauce, ginger, sake, and garlic, coated in potato starch or flour, and fried twice for maximum crunch. The technique of deep frying in this style dates back to the 8th century and came from China. The chicken version as you know it today is relatively recent, because chicken wasn't widely eaten in Japan until American broiler breeds arrived in the post-war decades. You'll find karaage everywhere, in bento boxes at convenience stores, as a snack at Izakayas, and at little specialty shops where you order it by the bag and eat it on the street.
Japanese curry, the curry that traveled the world. Japan has a national dish that almost nobody outside the country expects. It is curry. Japanese curry is eaten roughly 1.5 times per week by the average person in Japan. There are entire restaurant chains built around nothing else. Koko Ichibanya alone has more than 1,200 locations. The journey that got curry to Japan is genuinely remarkable. It started in India, got reshaped by British colonizers into a milder, thicker powder-based dish, was adopted by the British Royal Navy as a practical meal for long sea voyages, and arrived in Japan in the Meiji era through contact between the British Navy and the Imperial Japanese Navy. Japanese cooks took that Anglo-Indian curry and kept going. They thickened it further with a French roux. They sweetened it with apple or honey. They added potatoes, carrots, and onions. The result is something entirely its own. Not Indian, not British, distinctly Japanese. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force still serves curry every Friday to this day. The tradition started in the Navy more than 100 years ago, and it never stopped. Every ship has its own recipe. They actually hold competitions. When you eat curry in Japan, the standard presentation is curry sauce poured over short-grain, sticky rice, often with pickled vegetables called fukujin-zuke on the side. It is warm, slightly sweet, and deeply satisfying. The katsu curry version, with a tonkatsu cutlet on top, is the most popular variety, both in Japan and internationally. Rice, miso, and onigiri. Everything we have talked about so far has been the main act, but there are two things on almost every Japanese table at almost every meal that rarely get the spotlight they deserve. Miso soup has been part of Japanese daily life since the Kamakura period, roughly 800 years ago. It started as food for the nobility and Buddhist monks. The samurai class adopted it as a daily meal because it was portable, nutritious, and could be taken into battle. Soldiers during the Sengoku era, Japan's centuries of civil war, reportedly carried miso-soaked taro stems around their waists, which they could cut off and dissolve in boiling water for an instant meal. That is the original instant soup packet. Miso paste, made from fermented soybeans, is the backbone of Japanese cuisine in ways that extend far beyond soup. It is used as a glaze for fish, a marinade for meat, a base for ramen broth, and a seasoning for countless other dishes. There are regional varieties: red miso in the east, white miso in the west, barley miso in the south. And then there is rice, specifically the rice ball, onigiri. Carbonized rice balls have been excavated from ruins in Japan dating back 2,000 years to the Yayoi period. Samurai carried them wrapped in bamboo leaves as field rations. Today, they sit in refrigerated shelves at every convenience store in the country, available at all hours, wrapped in a clever packaging system that keeps the nori crackly and separate from the rice until the moment you open it. Onigiri is not sushi. The rice is plain, lightly salted, not vinegar. The fillings range from pickled plum to salmon to tuna mayo. If you're traveling and need something quick that won't disappoint you, pick up an onigiri from a convenience store. It will cost you less than $1, and it will be perfect. Here's a question worth sitting with. If you had one day in Japan and could only eat 5 things, which 5 would you actually choose? And if this kind of deep dive into food history and culture is your thing, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. We're just getting started.